Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, guys. Welcome to the next session. Let me introduce myself. My name is Vikas Kumar, and last name is Kumar, easy to speak. And I have 17 years experience into IT infrastructure, consulting, and training. I am certified from Windows Server 2003 onwards on multiple skills, and my email address is trainer@logicit.in. Reach out to me if you have any technical query on Windows servers, Azure, Azure Security, and Office 365. If you go to the YouTube and search LogicIT.in, subscribe my channel as well, and which is LogicIT.in. So in this session, I'm going to talk about a WAF, which is Web Application Firewall on Azure Application Gateway. So I will show you a complete end-to-end demo also for that. For this, high-level steps is I'm going to configure one VNet, couple of VMs called as Web Application Web 01, Web 02 into an availability set so that they make sure both the VMs are not on the same rack, and at least at any point of time, one VM always be up and running. I will configure small application, identical application on Web 1 and Web 2, and then configuring an application gateway, and on top putting application firewall as well. Let me explain you full-fledged with a diagram. So Azure Web Application Firewall, you see on the back end we have a couple of VMs, maybe on site 1 and site 2, and it's a layer 7 load balancer. On top, I'll put a WAF as a firewall. So Azure Web Application Firewall on Azure Application Gateway provides centralized protection of your web application from common exploits and vulnerability. So Web Application Gateway is your load balancer, but on top, if I put a configure a WAF rule, it protects us for common exploits and vulnerabilities. Web applications are increasingly targeted by malicious attacks that exploits common known vulnerabilities. It includes your SQL injection, cross-site scripting. These are the very popular common attacks. All of the WAF features listed in the WAF policy, we need to enable it, and we can attach this to a application gateway. So what are the benefits of WAF on the gateway? First of all, definitely a protection, and it protects your web application from web vulnerabilities and attack without modification to backend code. Protect multiple web applications at the same time. An instance of Web Application Gateway can host up to 40 websites that are protected by a web application firewall. Create custom WAF policies for different sites behind the same WAF, and protect your web application from malicious bots with the IP reputation rule set. On top, you can do the monitoring also. So what are the main features, what type of attacks they can prevent? So SQL injection protection, cross-site scripting protection, protection against other common web attacks such as command injection, HTTP request smuggling, HTTP response splitting, and remote file inclusion. It protects against HTTP protocol violations, HTTP protocol missing host, user agent, and accept headers. It protects against scanners, and it protects against application misconfigurations. So these are the various features which automatically work on under WAF. So you can put WAF policies and WAF rules, custom rules as well. So any request comes to your load balancer, so it will be hit by the WAF first, which is a part of your load balancer, and then load balancer decides how to handle the request. So it based on the performance and other different algorithms. Now let's try to do a demo for that. So I'm going to do one VNet, two VMs, and put it into the availability set. So first is go to the resource group, creating a new resource group. So resource group 01 WAF demo. Create a resource one virtual network. Search with the virtual network. Virtual network. So I'm creating one subnet right now for the application. If it is a 2-tier, 3-tier application, then definitely we'll do subnet 1, web tier, application tier, and database tier. So VNet is WAF demo 10100 and subnet number 1, put it application 01 for web application 10100. This is done. So I'm creating two VMs, server 2019, web 01, web 02, and I'll put it into a availability set. So same resource group folder, web 01, 2019, B2S, put some password with the username and password. So as a best practice, we should not allow public IP RDP access for production servers. We should use something called passion host or jumpbox kind of scenarios. If you see on my YouTube channel, I already explained what is passion host. In production, we should uncheck, but right now I'm allowing this. Plus a firewall rule for HTTP port number so that we can hit the application and firewall allow that particular port number. And one more thing I am going to do is availability set, which is high availability. So under availability option, I'm saying availability set so that both the VMs should not be on the same rack. If there is a downtime in the rack on the backend hardware, at least they make sure the second VM should be running on a different rack. So this is called web availability set. So how many fault domains, how many different hardwares, update domain and fault domain. So this is a reboot schedule. So they make sure all the VMs are on different racks, 3 racks they are giving, different hardware and different reboot schedule for this maintenance. So 5 is okay right now. So I'm putting into the availability set. Once the VM1 is done, then we will configure VM2. VM2 should be on the same existing availability set. So there is a one validation failed. Let's refresh. So it's maybe due to internet might be. So Let's wait for a few minutes for this deployment. So this is done. So if I see availability set, so then I'll get it one VM is ready under the web availability set, which is tagging number they will give 00. So I built another VM right away, and then I'll show you they will get a new tagging number 11. So they make sure web 01 and web 02 both are on a different racks. So I'll create a new machine under the existing availability set. So web 02, put it into availability set, and this time I'm doing existing one, putting the same username and password for the login. Same RDP and HTTP protocol. So I'll make sure it's in same VNet and existing subnet, which is we already defined app1 WAF demo. So now if I see availability set, so definitely I will see the two VMs putting into the tagging number called 00 and 11. That's called availability set. So what I'm going to do, I will connect these two VMs and install IAS on both the VMs. So one I'll show you live here, and one I'll do it offline. So connect to the web 01. So server manager, and then add roles. Next, next, web 01, and install IAS role. Next, next, and install. So similarly, we need to do the IAS role for web 2. So I'm configuring identical application or sample application right now. So installing IAS on this machine as well. So now you see uh, web 01 IAS is installed. So now I'm configuring IAS and sample page. So notepad, sample application, and this is my web 01. So why I'm mentioning the server name, load balancer will get to know that page is handled by which server. So save as, let me show you again, file save as, do the all files, save it into the C drive, inetpub, wwroot, file name is dcaps, default.stm right now. And then let's see the sample page. So http ://web01. That's fine. So now I'll go to second machine, web02. So web02 is also IES done. And here also I'll do the same notepad. Sample application, web02. File, save as. All files, default decaps, default.stm, and put it into C drive, inetpub, www-root, and save. Make sure the local application should be up and running. So http ://web02. So looks good. Now let's configure the application gateway. So when I go to the create and search application gateway, so application gateway is your load balancer, layer 7, which I explained you. So when you define this application gateway, put it into the same resource group. Name is app01 application gateway. So region we are working East US. And pricing tier, standard, normal load balancer. But if you need with WAF, so I'll do it with WAF version 2. Minimum instance count, maximum instance count, auto scaling. So minimum 1, maximum 2, auto scaling. If you say no, then it's a single instance count. Then you decide 1 and 2. So I'll do right now auto scaling with maximum 3. Firewall status enable. Firewall mode detection or prevention. So detection is only for detect, but right now we are enabling the prevention mode, which is advanced mode. And availability zone is in zone 1 and zone 2. So this WAF is integrated with WAF demo. So now they ask me to configure a very special subnet called WAF subnet. So that's recommended. You see, subnet must only have application gateway. So I'll go to the manage subnet, and here I'm going to define a subnet. So one dedicated subnet I am defining as a WAF subnet 10110. So if I say now web application or application gateway, So now if you see, when you select your East US folder name, application gateway, so same auto scaling 0 to 3 we discussed, availability zone, zone 1 and zone 2, and which network, and there we define a dedicated subnet called WAF subnet. So looks good. HTTP 2. So by default, HTTP 2 support is disabled. If you need to enable HTTP 2 support, you can enable that. I'm making like a default. So it's a load balancer configuration now. Front end, load balancer public IP. So application gateway public IP. So in this one basic things I'm going to tell you. So when you do this WAF, so you have 4 options: standard, standard v2, WAF, and WAF v2. So if you are doing standard and standard v2, it's give you only load balancer capabilities. So I want it has to be a WAF with the latest version 2 capability for WAF. So that's, I'm selecting the pricing tier, and then it asks you to enable firewall mode as a prevention mode. So this is one very important change I'm doing here. So public IP I have given, front end. Backend pool is my VMs, application VMs. Add backend pool without a target, no. So virtual machines. Web, web 2. So both the VMs I have added. Backend. Next, configuration. Front end IP done. Routing rules. So routing rule 1, listener name, listener 01. Front end IP is my public IP, port number 80, and basic listener, that's called my backend. In the backend pool, my VMs and backend target. Backend pool we already have. And now the load balancing rule. So HTTP rule, port 80, and request timeout 20 seconds. Custom rules is okay. We are not doing cookie based connection training right now. So looks good. Routing rule number, backend pool is my web VMs, and this is good. Next, no tagging, and review and create. It will take 10-15 minutes to deploy this complete infrastructure. Now deployment is completed. So if I go to now my resource group and WAF gateway, so I'll see definitely one public IP. And if I try to hit this public IP, So definitely we'll see the page from the backend machine. So web 01, couple of it is web 02, web 01, both are getting. So load balancing is working fine. So now I'll try to change some firewall rules. Now if I go to the same resource group folder and go to WAF, so now I want a custom application rules. So custom firewall rules. So for that, if I go to the web gateway, so configuration is fine. Web application firewall. So WAF2 prevention is fine. Looks good. Backend pool is fine. HTTP is okay. Front end configuration, listeners. So I think this is fine. So one more thing, when I go to the web application firewall, rules are fine. Under rules, I am enabling advanced rules. So these are the protection rules what we have for scanner detection, SQL injections. So all these protection rules, you need to enable it. That's recommended. So now this firewall will protect from all the application attack as soon as you enable these rules and all the kinds of application attack. So now suppose I want to put some custom firewall policy. Say example, this application can be accessible only from my corporate IP, not from any other IP. If you need a real custom policies, then you need to define a very special component called web application firewall policies. So I search web application firewall. Firewall WAF. So no, it's not the right choice. Web application firewall. Azure web application firewall. So when you search Azure web application firewall, Microsoft, put this WAF. So Azure web application firewall, create. So now WAF. So WAF policy can be integrated with front doors, application gateway, which is a regional load balancer. So now WAF with the regional load balancer, put it into the same resource group. So WAF policy. So same detection mode or prevention mode. All the rules are enabled. Policy, maximum there are 40 policies we can define. Custom rules. So I define one custom rule. So say my corporate IP and priority number 100. And does not contain the IP address. So this I'll do a one public IP. So I have one another machine is running with different public IP 104, 107 and it. So I'll put this rule. So if this IP does not contain this IP, please deny. So indirectly from this IP it is allowed and for rest of the world it's deny. That's called the custom rule. And associate this through application gateway, which we already have application gateway, and done. So 5 minutes before, it was working from my laptop. And now from the laptop, it should not work because for my laptop, it's a different IP. I allowed this particular server IP. So from there, it should work. From my laptop, it should not work. So let's wait for this deployment. So now this is done. So let's revalidate. So custom policies allow only this one. The rest of the world does not contain, it's blocked. So IP allow is 107. So from my laptop, it should not work. Very good. And now from the server public IP 107, which I allowed, which is my corporate IP, and my load balancer application is working. So this is a way you can deploy custom policies on top of your WAF. So I'm sure you enjoy this series, and thank you very much for watching. In case if you have any question, feel free to email me and subscribe my YouTube channel as well. Thank you very much.